The candlelight in Blackriver Manor flickered across the ornate dining table where Prince Valerius sat alone, as he had for centuries. His long, pale fingers traced the rim of his goblet, filled with a dark liquid that gave off a rich, metallic scent. The crimson barely touched his lips before he set it down with a sigh. 300 years of existence had made even the finest blood taste like ash in his mouth. Servants moved silently around him, shadows trained to anticipate his needs without disturbing his perpetual solitude. None dared meet his eyes, those ancient pools of midnight blue that had witnessed empires rise and fall. The weight of immortality had long since crushed whatever capacity for joy he once possessed. Outside the grand windows, a storm battered the ancient castle walls. Lightning illuminated the cavernous dining hall in brief, violent flashes, revealing portraits of Valerius's ancestors, vampires who had ruled the hidden court of Blackriver for millennia. Their painted eyes seemed to follow him, judging his rule, his isolation, his unwillingness to take a bride and continue their bloodline. "Your Highness," his steward, Henrik, materialized at his side. "I regret to inform you that 3 of our serving staff have fallen ill. With the gathering of the council approaching, I have taken the liberty of bringing in temporary help from the village." Valerius waved a dismissive hand. "Mortals in my household? You know how I feel about their fragility. These are desperate times, sire. The blood moon rises in 7 nights. The council will expect nothing short of perfection." "Very well." Valerius stood, his tall frame imposing even in repose. "But keep them away from me. Their heartbeats are distracting." Henrik bowed deeply. "Of course, Your Highness." As the steward retreated, Valerius turned to face the window. Lightning cracked across the sky, illuminating his reflection. A face unchanged for centuries, handsome but cold, like marble carved by a master and then abandoned. "Mortals," he whispered to himself, "fleeting as candle flames. What is the point of knowing them, of caring for dust?" Lucy Novak pulled her coat tighter as the ancient castle loomed ahead, silhouetted against the stormy sky. Rain plastered her auburn hair to her face as she hurried up the winding path. The cobblestones were slick beneath her worn shoes, and she nearly lost her footing twice before reaching the servants' entrance. "This is insane," she muttered to herself, knocking on the heavy wooden door. Taking a serving job at the creepy castle outside town? Mom would have a fit. But her mother was not here to object. She had passed 6 months ago, leaving Lucy with mounting medical bills and a tiny apartment she could barely afford. When the employment agency had mentioned emergency short-term work at Blackriver Manor, paying 3 times her usual waitressing salary, she had jumped at the opportunity. The door creaked open to reveal a stern-faced woman in a black uniform. "Lucy Novak?" The woman's voice was clipped, efficient. "Yes, ma'am. I am Mrs. Winters, head of household staff. You are late." "I'm sorry. The storm. Excuses do not serve in this house. Come in quickly." Lucy stepped into a stone corridor lit by electric sconces designed to look like torches. The air was noticeably cooler inside, carrying the scent of beeswax and something else, something rich and unfamiliar. "This way." Mrs. Winters moved with startling speed for a woman of her age. "The others have already been briefed. You will serve at the council gathering in 7 nights. Until then, you will learn the protocols of this household." Lucy struggled to keep pace. "What kind of protocols?" Mrs. Winters stopped so abruptly that Lucy nearly collided with her. The older woman's eyes narrowed. "This is not your ordinary household, Miss Novak. The master has specific requirements. You will not speak unless spoken to. You will not enter rooms uninvited. You will not wander the manor at night. And above all, you will not disturb the master." "Who exactly is the master?" Lucy asked, realizing she knew almost nothing about her new employer. Prince Valerius is the last of the ancient Blackriver line. His family has owned these lands for countless generations. Mrs. Winters lowered her voice. He values his privacy above all else. A prince? Like an actual royal? Of a sort. The woman's mouth tightened. You have much to learn and little time. Follow me. As they walked, Lucy noticed how the staff they passed kept their eyes downcast. Everyone moved with purpose but also caution, as if the walls themselves might report any misstep. Whatever this place was, it felt less like a manor and more like a fortress or a temple. They entered a large kitchen where several other people in similar serving uniforms were being instructed by a tall, thin man. Lucy recognized two others from the village, a college student named Tomas and an older woman who sometimes played piano at the local bar. "This is Henrik," Mrs. Winters announced, "the master's steward. You will obey his instructions without question." Henrik turned, his pale eyes assessing Lucy with unnerving intensity. "Miss Novak, we had begun to think you might not join us." "The storm," she began, but fell silent at Mrs. Winters' warning glance. Henrik handed her a uniform, black trousers and a crisp white shirt with a high collar. "You will wear this at all times when on duty. No jewelry, no perfume, no scented products of any kind." "Is the master allergic?" Lucy asked, genuinely curious. A strange expression flickered across Henrik's face, something between amusement and concern. "In a manner of speaking, his senses are extraordinarily acute." Lucy nodded, though confusion must have shown on her face. "There is one more thing," Henrik added. "Should you encounter the master, do not look directly into his eyes. It is considered impolite." Lucy fought the urge to laugh. What kind of eccentric aristocrat was this prince? But the serious expressions on everyone's faces stopped her. Whatever game they were playing, the pay was real, and she needed it desperately. "I understand," she said, though she did not. "Not yet." 3 days passed in a blur of training. Lucy learned the proper way to serve blood-red wine without allowing the bottle to make a sound against the glass. She memorized the intricate table settings for the upcoming council dinner. She practiced moving silently across the ancient floors, learning which boards creaked and which stones were uneven. Throughout it all, she caught whispers among the permanent staff, strange comments about the old ones arriving, fresh supplies in the cellar, and the blood moon strengthening his powers. She dismissed it as servant gossip or some elaborate role-playing scenario for wealthy eccentrics. On the 4th night, Lucy was tasked with bringing fresh linens to the East Wing. Mrs. Winters had given explicit instructions. Place them outside the chamber door. Do not knock. Do not enter. The East Wing was darker than the rest of the castle, lit only by occasional sconces that cast more shadows than light. As Lucy approached what she assumed was the master's chamber, she heard something that made her pause. Music, haunting and beautiful, drifting from behind the heavy door. Someone was playing a violin with such skill and emotion that it made her heart ache. The melody spoke of loss, of endless loneliness, of years stretching into centuries. Before she realized what she was doing, Lucy found herself leaning against the door, eyes closed, absorbing every note. The music stopped abruptly. Lucy froze, suddenly aware of her transgression. "Who is there?" The voice from within was deep, commanding, and unmistakably annoyed. Lucy's throat went dry. I'm sorry, sir." Lucy Novak, from the serving staff. "I was delivering linens." A long silence followed. Then, "Enter." She hesitated, remembering Mrs. Winters' warning, but the command had been clear. Balancing the linens in one arm, she pushed open the heavy door. The chamber beyond was vast and elegant, more like a private apartment than a bedroom. Bookshelves lined the walls, filled with ancient tomes. A fire crackled in a massive stone hearth, and beside it stood a tall figure, his back to her, violin still in hand. "Leave them on the table and go," he said without turning. Lucy moved to obey, placing the linens on an ornate side table. As she turned to leave, her eyes fell on a painting above the fireplace. A portrait of a striking young man in Renaissance clothing. His eyes the same midnight blue as the man who stood before her now. "That cannot be," she whispered, forgetting herself. The figure turned sharply, and Lucy found herself face to face with Prince Valerius for the first time. He was exactly as depicted in the centuries-old portrait, impossibly handsome, with angular features and those penetrating dark blue eyes. His skin was pale but not unhealthy, and his black hair was pulled back from his face, accentuating high cheekbones and a strong jaw. Remembering too late, Lucy dropped her gaze. "You were instructed not to look at me," he said, his voice lacking the anger she expected. Instead, he sounded curious. "I apologize, Your Highness. The painting surprised me." "And why is that?" Lucy hesitated, knowing she was already in trouble. "Because you look exactly like the man in it. But that would be impossible unless... Valerius set his violin down carefully, taking a step toward her. "Unless the stories are true. About Blackriver. About what lives in this castle." Lucy raised her eyes, defying the rules. "You are not human, are you?" Valerius moved with preternatural speed, suddenly standing directly before her. Lucy gasped but stood her ground, even as her heart raced. "And if I am not," he said softly, "would you run? Would you scream?" Lucy should have been terrified. Instead, she felt an inexplicable calm. "No. Why not?" "Because if you wanted to hurt me, I would already be hurt." She met his gaze directly now. "And because that music you were playing, no monster could create something so beautiful." Valerius stared at her, genuine surprise crossing his features. Then he stepped back, creating distance between them. "You are either very brave or very foolish, Lucy Novak." He gestured toward the door. "Leave now, and I will forget this incident." Lucy nodded and backed toward the door, still facing him. "The music, what was it called?" A shadow passed over his face. "It has no name. I composed it myself." "It's the saddest thing I have ever heard," she said honestly. 3 centuries of existence provides ample material for melancholy, Miss Novak." His voice was dry, dismissive. Lucy placed her hand on the door handle. "Maybe you have been composing the wrong soundtrack for your life." Before he could respond, she slipped out, closing the door behind her. Only when she was halfway down the corridor did she realize she was shaking. Not with fear, but with exhilaration. The prince was a vampire, a real vampire, and she had looked him in the eyes and lived to tell about it. Valerius stood motionless for several minutes after the mortal woman left. Her scent lingered in the air, honeysuckle with undertones of cinnamon and the unmistakable iron-rich aroma of human blood. But it was not her blood that had captured his attention. It was her audacity, her complete lack of appropriate fear. "Composing the wrong soundtrack," he repeated to himself, shaking his head in disbelief. In 300 years, no one had dared speak to him with such frankness. Even among his own kind, he was treated with careful deference. The last pure-blooded prince of the ancient Blackriver line, whose powers had only grown stronger with each passing century. Mortals were supposed to be food or at best servants. Disposable creatures whose brief lives were meaningless in the grand tapestry of immortal existence. That had been the teaching of his sire, the principle upon which vampire society functioned. Yet this waitress had looked him in the eye and criticized his music. His music. Valerius returned to his violin, running his fingers along its aged wood. He had acquired it from Antonio Stradivari himself, in what mortals now called the year 1704. It had been his most faithful companion through centuries of solitude. He placed it under his chin and drew the bow across the strings, resuming the melancholy melody he had been playing. But something had changed. The notes felt hollow, performative, because a mortal waitress had called his life's soundtrack into question. Valerius set the violin down with a sigh. The council gathering was approaching, and with it, expectations he had no desire to fulfill. The elders would once again pressure him to take a vampire bride, to continue the Blackriver bloodline. They would speak of prophecies and duty, of the waning power of the old families. What they would not understand, what they could never understand, was that the prospect of an eternal union without love seemed more torturous than final death itself. Ridiculous, he muttered, turning away from the violin. He was a prince of the blood, not some lovesick mortal poet. Yet as dawn approached, driving him to the sanctuary of his sleeping chamber, Valerius found himself wondering what kind of music Lucy Novak would compose for an immortal life. The next evening, Lucy was assigned to inventory supplies in the wine cellar. As she descended the stone steps, the temperature dropped noticeably. The cellar was vast and labyrinthine, with rows upon rows of dusty bottles stretching into shadowy recesses. Henrik had provided her with a detailed list and strict instructions. Count only. Touch nothing without permission. Lucy worked methodically, marking each vintage on her clipboard. Some of the bottles dated back centuries, their labels yellowed with age. Others were newer but no less expensive. As she ventured deeper into the cellar, the wine racks gave way to another storage area. Here, locked behind an ornate iron gate, were hundreds of small crystal vials containing dark liquid. Each was labeled with a date and what appeared to be a name. Blood, Lucy whispered, her suspicions confirmed. This was no ordinary wine cellar. It was a blood bank for vampires. You should not be in this section. The voice came from behind her. Lucy whirled around to find Prince Valerius standing in the shadows, watching her with those penetrating dark blue eyes. I was told to inventory the cellar, she explained, fighting to keep her voice steady. The wine cellar, he clarified. Not my personal collection. Lucy glanced back at the vials. So it is blood. Did you expect anything else after our conversation last night? Valerius approached, his movements fluid and silent. Does it disturb you? Lucy considered the question. Less than it probably should. Why is that? I worked in the hospital where my mother died, she said, surprising herself with her honesty. I have seen more blood than most people. It is just part of life. And death, Valerius added softly. He studied her face. You speak of your mother's passing without tears. I cried enough while she was dying. Cancer took her slowly. By the end, death was a relief, for her at least. You mortals live such brief, fragile lives, Valerius observed. Yet you face your mortality with remarkable courage. Do we have a choice? Lucy asked. There is always a choice. Valerius gestured toward the vials. Immortality has its price, but it is available to those willing to pay it. Lucy shook her head. I do not think I would want to live forever, especially not if it meant becoming as sad as you are. Valerius stiffened. You presume much about my emotional state, Miss Novak. Am I wrong? She challenged. Your music says otherwise. For a moment, Lucy thought she had gone too far. The temperature in the cellar seemed to drop further, and Valerius's eyes darkened to midnight. Then, unexpectedly, his expression softened. Few have ever dared to speak to me as you do. Is that why you have not fired me yet? Or, you know, she drew a finger across her throat in a slashing motion. Are you mocking me, mortal? Valerius asked, but there was no malice in his tone. Maybe a little, Lucy admitted. Should I stop? Valerius considered her for a long moment. No, he finally said. It is refreshing. Like a cool glass of O-negative? Lucy quipped before she could stop herself. Valerius's eyes widened fractionally. Then, to her astonishment, the corner of his mouth twitched upward. It was not quite a smile, but it was the closest thing to one she had seen on his face. AB positive, actually, he replied. If one must indulge. Lucy grinned. Was that a vampire joke, Your Highness? Merely a statement of fact. But the almost smile lingered. Finish the wine inventory and return to the upper levels, Miss Novak. This area is restricted for your safety. From you. Valerius shook his head. From my guests. The council members arriving for the gathering. Not all share my restraint where mortals are concerned. And why do you have restraint? Lucy asked, genuinely curious. Perhaps I have evolved beyond the base instincts of my kind. Valerius turned to leave. Or perhaps I simply find the idea of drinking waitresses to be in poor taste. It took Lucy a moment to realize he had made another joke. By the time she did, he had vanished into the shadows, leaving her alone with her clipboard and a growing fascination with the vampire prince. The next few days passed in a flurry of preparations. The castle was transformed for the arrival of the Vampire Council. Ancient tapestries unfurled from storage, precious artifacts displayed in glass cases, ritual chambers prepared with arcane symbols etched in silver and gold. Lucy worked alongside the other temporary staff, polishing silver that never seemed to hold fingerprints and arranging flowers that somehow avoided wilting in the castle's cool air. Throughout it all, she found herself looking for Prince Valerius, but he remained elusive. On the 6th night, as the blood moon approached, Lucy was assigned to prepare guest chambers in the north wing. As she worked, she overheard Henrik speaking with Mrs. Winters in the corridor. The prince has been different these past days, Henrik said, his voice low, almost distracted. It is the approach of the blood moon, Mrs. Winters replied. His powers grow stronger, but so do the demands of his nature. No, it is something else. Yesterday I could have sworn I heard him humming. Humming. In 3 centuries, I have never heard such a thing. The council arrives tomorrow night. Whatever his current mood, he will need to focus. Lady Carmilla is coming with her daughter. Another matchmaking attempt, Henrik sighed. He will not be pleased. It is his duty to continue the bloodline. The prophecy is clear. Only a prince of pure Blackriver blood can hold the ancient powers in check. Without an heir. Their voices faded as they moved down the hallway, leaving Lucy with her thoughts. The prince was being pressured into an arranged marriage. It explained his melancholy, his isolation. As she finished preparing the guest room, Lucy noticed a door at the end of the hall that stood slightly ajar. Curious, she approached and peeked inside. It was a music room, filled with instruments from across the centuries. A harpsichord, several violins, a magnificent grand piano. Moonlight streamed through tall windows, illuminating sheet music scattered across a writing desk. Without thinking, Lucy entered. The room felt different from the rest of the castle, more lived in, less formal. This was not a showcase for visitors. It was a sanctuary. She approached the piano, running her fingers lightly over the keys without pressing them. Her mother had taught her to play as a child, before illness had claimed her strength. Those lessons were among Lucy's most cherished memories. "Do you play?" The voice came from the doorway. Lucy turned to find Valerius watching her, his expression unreadable in the moonlight. "A little," she admitted. "My mother taught me." "Show me." It was not a request. Lucy hesitated, then sat at the bench. "I am not very good." "Play anyway." She placed her hands on the keys and began a simple Chopin nocturne. Her technique was rusty, and she missed several notes, but the melody remained intact, gentle, wistful, tinged with longing. When she finished, she looked up to find Valerius standing closer, his expression thoughtful. "Your mother taught you well," he said. "There is feeling in your playing. She said technique can be learned, but emotion must be lived." Lucy smiled at the memory. She would have loved this room. Would she have approved of your current employment? Serving in the House of Monsters. Lucy considered this. She always told me to look beyond appearances, to judge people by their actions, not their nature. "And how do you judge me, Lucy Novak?" Valerius moved to stand beside the piano, his fingers trailing along its polished surface. "I am still deciding," she answered honestly. "You are not what the stories say vampires should be." "And what do the stories say?" "That you are soulless, evil, incapable of creation or compassion." She gestured to the music room. "This place proves otherwise." Valerius was silent for a moment. "Many of my kind would fit your stories perfectly. I have simply had more time to evolve beyond the bloodlust that defines younger vampires." "Is that why the council is coming? To check on your evolution?" His eyes narrowed slightly. "You have been eavesdropping." Lucy shrugged, unapologetic. "Hard not to in a castle full of whispers. The council comes for many reasons. Chief among them, to pressure me into a political marriage with another ancient bloodline. And you do not want this marriage." "What I want has never mattered," he said, an edge of bitterness in his voice. "I am the last of my line. Duty dictates my path." "That sounds lonely." Lucy stood from the piano bench. "No wonder your music is so sad. And what would you suggest instead, Miss Novak?" "A cheerful waltz as I march toward an eternity with someone I do not love. Maybe a different partner." The words escaped before she could consider their implications. Valerius stared at her, something flickering in his eyes. Surprise, curiosity, and something else she could not name. "You speak of matters you cannot understand." "Try me," Lucy challenged. "Explain it to me." For a moment she thought he might. Then his expression closed, becoming the mask of aristocratic indifference she had first encountered. "Return to your duties, Miss Novak. The council arrives tomorrow night, and everything must be perfect." He turned away. "And stay out of the music room. This is not a place for mortals." As he strode from the room, Lucy called after him, "Running away does not suit you, Your Highness." Valerius paused in the doorway but did not turn around. "Neither does insolence suit you, yet you wear it remarkably well." Then he was gone, leaving Lucy alone in the moonlit room, wondering if she had imagined the almost smile on his lips as he delivered his parting words. The night of the council gathering arrived with a blood moon hanging heavy in the sky, casting a crimson glow across Blackriver Manor. Lucy and the other temporary staff were given their final instructions by Henrik, who appeared more tense than usual. "You will serve and observe, nothing more," he emphasized. "Do not engage the guests in conversation. Do not make eye contact. And most importantly, do not respond if they address you directly. Refer all inquiries to me." "Are we in danger?" Tomas, the college student, asked nervously. Henrik's expression was grave. "The prince has extended his protection to all who serve in this house tonight. However, some of our guests view mortals as entertainment. Stay alert and stay together." They were each assigned specific duties. Lucy would serve drinks during the pre-dinner reception, goblets of dark liquid that she now knew was not wine. The irony of a human waitress serving blood to vampires was not lost on her. As the first guests arrived, Lucy positioned herself near the grand entrance of the ballroom, a silver tray balanced carefully in her hands. The vampires entered in groups of 2 and 3, their movements graceful and predatory. Many wore modern formal attire, though some appeared in more traditional dress from various historical periods. Lucy kept her eyes downcast as instructed, but she couldn't help stealing glances. Some of the vampires looked almost human, while others had a more pronounced otherworldliness. Eyes that reflected light like a cat's, fingers slightly too long, smiles that revealed just a hint of fong. Prince Valerius greeted each arrival at the door, every inch the royal host in his black formal attire. A silver pendant bearing his family crest hung around his neck, gleaming in the candlelight. He was polite but distant, his expression revealing nothing of the almost warmth he had shown Lucy in the music room. Valerius, my old friend. A tall, elegant vampire with auburn hair approached, a younger female at his side. May I present my daughter, Lilith? She has long admired your reputation. Lord Demetrius. Valerius bowed slightly. Lady Lilith, welcome to Blackriver. Lilith curtsied, her crimson gown flowing like blood around her ankles. The honor is mine, your highness. I have heard your compositions are without equal in our world. You are too kind. Valerius's voice was cool, formal. Perhaps you might play for us later? Lord Demetrius suggested, his intentions transparent. Perhaps. As the vampires moved into the ballroom, Lucy approached with her tray of goblets. Lord Demetrius took one without acknowledging her presence, but Lilith paused, her eyes flicking over Lucy with predatory interest. What a lovely servant, she remarked to her father, though her eyes remained on Lucy. Such unusual coloring. May I taste her, Valerius? Lucy froze, her heart suddenly pounding. You may not, Valerius replied smoothly. All who serve in my household are under my protection. Just a small sample? Lilith pressed, reaching out to touch Lucy's hair. I would not damage her. Lady Lilith. Valerius's voice dropped to a dangerous register. In my house you will respect my rules. The staff are not for feeding. Lilith withdrew her hand, her smile not reaching her eyes. Of course. How progressive of you. As they moved away, Lucy released the breath she had been holding. Valerius glanced back at her, a silent question in his eyes. Are you well? Lucy gave a small nod, grateful for his intervention. The reception continued as more guests arrived. Lucy circulated with her tray, careful to remain unobtrusive. She noticed that Valerius watched her from across the room, his attention divided between his official duties and tracking her movements. As the gathering moved toward the grand dining hall for the formal council meeting, Lucy was instructed to remain in the kitchen. Only Henrik and Mrs. Winters would serve the actual council dinner, where matters of vampire politics would be discussed. Take a break, Mrs. Winters told the temporary staff. Once the council session ends, they will return to the ballroom for entertainment. We will need you fresh for the second half of the evening. Lucy retreated to a small staff lounge where the other temporary workers were resting. Tomas looked pale, his hands slightly shaky. I cannot believe we are serving actual vampires, he whispered. Did you see the way some of them looked at us? Like we were the main course. The prince protected us, Lucy reminded him. He will not let them harm us. How can you be so calm? Tomas asked. Lucy shrugged, unwilling to reveal her previous encounters with Valerius. They are just people with a different diet. People who have lived for centuries and can drain you dry in minutes, Tomas countered. Then it is a good thing we are valuable staff, not food, Lucy replied pragmatically. She excused herself to use the restroom, but once in the hallway, curiosity got the better of her. The council meeting was taking place in the grand dining hall, which had a musicians' gallery overlooking it, a remnant from medieval times when minstrels would play during feasts. Lucy slipped through a narrow service door and climbed the spiral stairs to the gallery. From this vantage point, she could see the entire council gathered around the massive table below. Valerius sat at the head, flanked by the eldest-looking vampires. The conversation drifted up to where she crouched in the shadows. "The old ways are fading," one ancient vampire was saying, his voice creaking like dry parchment. "Our numbers dwindle while the mortals multiply. We must strengthen our bloodlines. Through selective breeding like cattle?" Valerius's voice was sharp. "Is that what we have become?" "It is about survival," Lady Lilith's father argued. "The prophecy is clear. Only a pure-blooded heir of Blackriver can maintain the barriers between realms. Without such an heir, the ancient evils our ancestors imprisoned will break free. So I am reminded at every council meeting," Valerius replied dryly. "Yet in 3 centuries, no suitable match has been presented." "My daughter," Lord Demetrius began, "is lovely," Valerius interrupted, "but not of sufficiently ancient blood. The prophecy specifies the combination of Blackriver power with old human bloodlines, not diluted vampire stock." An elderly female vampire leaned forward. "There is another possibility, Valerius. The Novak bloodline." Lucy stiffened at the mention of her surname. "The Novaks died out 2 generations ago," Valerius said dismissively. "Not entirely," the female vampire countered. "My seers have traced a surviving branch. One living descendant remains, a female, here in this very village." Lucy's blood ran cold. Could they be talking about her family? "Even if that were true," Valerius argued, "the prophecy speaks of willing sacrifice and true connection. I will not force some unsuspecting mortal into our world based on her ancestry." "The blood moon rises, Valerius." The ancient vampire gestured to the crimson light streaming through the high windows. "Tonight, the barriers between realms thin. We feel the stirrings of the ancient evils. Without an heir of your blood, bound to the old human magic, those barriers will eventually fail." "I am aware of my duty," Valerius said coldly, "but I will fulfill it on my terms, not yours." The conversation shifted to other matters, but Lucy remained frozen in place, her mind racing. Could she be the descendant they spoke of? Her mother had always said their family had deep roots in this region, dating back centuries. But what did it mean for her? As the council meeting concluded, Lucy hurried back to the staff lounge, arriving just as Mrs. Winters came to summon them for the second half of the evening. "The entertainment portion is beginning," she announced. "The prince will play for his guests, and then there will be dancing. You will serve refreshments and otherwise remain invisible." The temporary staff followed her back to the ballroom, which had been rearranged with chairs facing a small stage area where a grand piano had been positioned. The vampire guests took their seats as Valerius approached the instrument. Lucy positioned herself near the wall, tray in hand, as Valerius sat at the piano. Without preamble, he began to play. Not the melancholy composition she had heard in his chamber, but something new. The melody was complex, weaving darkness and light together in a way that made her heart ache with its beauty. As he played, his eyes found hers across the room. The connection was electric, impossible to break. It was as though he were playing for her alone, telling her something he could not say in words. When the piece ended, the vampire audience applauded appreciatively. Lady Lilith approached the piano, her intention clear. She would use this opportunity to ingratiate herself with the prince. "That was magnificent, Your Highness," she purred. "Perhaps we might play a duet? I am quite accomplished on the violin." "Another time, perhaps," Valerius demurred, rising from the bench. "I find myself in need of refreshment." He moved directly toward Lucy, who stood transfixed, unable to look away. When he reached her, he took a goblet from her tray and leaned close enough to whisper, "Meet me in the music room in 20 minutes. Enter through the service passage. We need to talk." Before she could respond, he had moved away, rejoining his guests as the orchestra began playing for dancing. Lucy watched as Lady Lilith maneuvered to partner with him for the first dance. Her victory smile aimed directly at Lucy. 20 minutes later, having arranged for Tomas to cover her serving duties, Lucy slipped through the service passage to the music room. Valerius was already waiting, standing by the window, the blood moon casting his silhouette in crimson light. "You heard the council discussion," he said without preamble. "It was not a question." "Yes," Lucy admitted. "They mentioned my family name. The Novak bloodline is ancient, tied to this land long before my kind claimed it." Valerius turned to face her. "Your ancestors were keepers of old magic, human magic that predates vampire power." "That cannot be true," Lucy protested. "My mother was a piano teacher. My father was an accountant before he left us. There was nothing magical about my childhood." "Magic does not always manifest as spells and potions, Lucy. Sometimes it shows in more subtle ways." Valerius approached her slowly. "Your unusual resilience in the face of supernatural threats. Your ability to look me in the eye without falling under my thrall. The way you see beyond the monster to the man beneath." "That is not magic," Lucy insisted. "That is just seeing people clearly. A rare gift, nonetheless." Valerius was standing directly before her now. "There is a prophecy, one that has bound my existence for centuries. It speaks of the joining of two bloodlines, vampire royalty and human magic, to create an heir who can maintain the barriers between realms." Lucy took a step back. "And you think I am that human? That is why you have not sent me away despite my insolence?" Hurt flashed across Valerius's face. "No. I have not sent you away because you are the first person in 300 years to treat me as something other than a monster or a prince. You speak to me as an equal. You challenge me. You—" He hesitated, then finished softly. "You make me remember what it was to be human." "Oh!" Lucy's anger dissipated, replaced by confusion. "But the prophecy has ruled my existence long enough," Valerius said firmly. "I tell you this not to pressure you, but to warn you. The council knows who you are now. They will not be satisfied until the prophecy is fulfilled." "What does that mean for me?" "It means you are in danger." Valerius reached out slowly, touching her cheek with cool fingers. "Some on the council would force the issue, taking the choice from both of us." Lucy should have been terrified, but instead, she felt a strange calm. "What do you want, Valerius?" "Not what the prophecy demands, not what the council expects. What do you want?" The question seemed to startle him. "No one has asked me that in centuries. I am asking now." Valerius was silent for a long moment, his dark blue eyes searching hers. Finally, he spoke, his voice barely above a whisper. "I want to feel again. To create music that speaks of something besides loneliness and duty. I want—" He swallowed, the gesture strangely human. "I want what I have not allowed myself to want since I was turned: connection, understanding, perhaps even love." The raw honesty in his voice made Lucy's heart race. She reached up, covering his hand with her own where it still rested on her cheek. "Then perhaps we should start there," she suggested softly. "Forget the prophecy. Forget the council. Just see where this leads." "It is not that simple," Valerius warned. "My world is dangerous for mortals, and there are forces at work beyond vampire politics. Ancient evils that would consume both our worlds if given the chance." "Maybe not simple," Lucy agreed, "but possible." She stretched up on her toes and, before her courage failed, pressed her lips to his. The kiss was gentle, questioning. For a moment, Valerius remained perfectly still. Then, with a soft sound somewhere between surrender and triumph, he wrapped his arms around her, deepening the kiss. When they finally broke apart, Lucy was breathless, her heart pounding. Valerius looked stunned, as though awakening from a long sleep. "I should return to my guests," he said reluctantly. "The blood moon ritual will begin soon, and my absence would be noted. What should I do?" "Stay here. You will be safer away from the ritual chamber." Valerius moved toward the door, then paused. "Lucy, thank you." "For what?" A smile, a real smile, warm and genuine, transformed his face. "For reminding me that immortality does not have to mean eternal solitude." As he turned to leave, a crash echoed from the hallway. The door burst open, and Lady Lilith stood there, her face contorted with rage. "Consorting with a human servant?" she hissed. "This is how the mighty Prince of Blackriver conducts himself?" Behind her appeared her father, Lord Demetrius, and 2 other council members. "Not just any human," Lord Demetrius observed coldly. "The Novak girl. How convenient that you found her just as we pressed the matter of succession." "Leave us," Valerius commanded, his voice dropping to a dangerous register. "I think not." Lord Demetrius stepped forward. "The prophecy must be fulfilled, Valerius. If you will not do your duty willingly, the council will ensure it happens nonetheless." He nodded to the vampires behind him, who moved with blinding speed. Before either Valerius or Lucy could react, they had seized her. One hand clamped over her mouth to prevent her from screaming. "Take her to the ritual chamber," Lord Demetrius ordered. "The blood moon is at its zenith. We will complete the ritual with or without the prince's cooperation." "Release her." Valerius's voice thundered with supernatural force, causing the windows to rattle. "She is under my protection." "Your protection means nothing when weighed against the survival of our kind," Lady Lilith sneered. "The barriers weaken, Valerius. The ancient evils stir. Would you doom us all for the sake of human sentiment?" As the vampires began dragging Lucy away, Valerius moved to stop them, only to be blocked by 4 more council members who had appeared in the doorway. "Do not fight us on this, old friend," one said solemnly. "The ritual must be performed. The bloodlines must be joined." "Not like this," Valerius growled, his eyes darkening to midnight. "Never like this." Lucy struggled against her captors, but their supernatural strength made resistance futile. As they pulled her from the room, she locked eyes with Valerius one last time, silently pleading for help. The last thing she saw before being dragged into the hallway was Valerius's face, transformed by a fury she had never witnessed. Fangs extended, eyes blazing with power old as the earth itself, the mask of civilization stripped away to reveal the ancient predator beneath. Lucy was brought to a circular chamber deep beneath the castle. Stone walls carved with arcane symbols surrounded a raised dais in the center, upon which stood an altar of black marble. The crimson light of the blood moon streamed down through a circular opening in the ceiling, bathing the altar in its unearthly glow. The vampire elders arranged themselves around the chamber, their faces solemn, almost reverent. Lord Demetrius directed his underlings to place Lucy on the altar, where they bound her wrists and ankles with silver chains. "This is insane," Lucy protested, struggling against her restraints. "You cannot force people to fulfill your prophecies." "Silence, human," Lady Lilith hissed. "You should be honored to serve such a purpose." "What purpose?" Lucy demanded. "What exactly are you planning to do to me?" The elderly female vampire who had spoken of the Novak bloodline at the council meeting approached the altar. In her hands, she carried an ancient book bound in what looked disturbingly like human skin. "The prophecy speaks of the joining of bloodlines," she explained, her voice surprisingly gentle. "The Blackriver royal blood must mingle with the old human magic of the Novak line to create a barrier that will hold back the ancient evils for another millennium." "Through a forced ritual?" Lucy asked incredulously. That cannot be what your prophecy actually says. The elder hesitated, exchanging glances with Lord Demetrius. The prophecy speaks of willing sacrifice and true connection, she admitted. But we have not time for courtship and consent. The barriers weaken with each passing hour. Then you have already failed, Lucy said firmly. Magic based on force and fear cannot be true magic. She speaks wisdom beyond her years, a new voice declared. All heads turned to see Valerius standing in the chamber entrance. Blood stained his formal attire, evidence of the battle he had fought to reach this place. Behind him lay several unconscious, or possibly dead, vampires who had tried to stop him. "Release her," he commanded, his voice resonating with power. "Now." "The ritual must be completed," Lord Demetrius insisted, though he took a step back from Valerius's murderous gaze. "The barriers will hold," Valerius interrupted, advancing into the chamber, "because I will maintain them as I have for 3 centuries, without forcing an innocent woman against her will." "You cannot hold them alone much longer," the elderly female vampire warned. "Your strength wanes, Valerius. We all feel it." "Then I will find another way." Valerius continued forward, the lesser vampires scrambling to clear his path. "But it will not be this way. Not through force." He reached the altar and, with a single powerful motion, snapped the chains binding Lucy's wrists and ankles. The silver links shattered like glass, falling away. "Are you hurt?" he asked, helping her sit up. "Just scared," Lucy admitted. "And really, really angry." A smile flickered across Valerius's face. "Your courage continues to astonish me." He turned to face the council, positioning himself between them and Lucy. "Leave my home," he commanded. "All of you. The council is dismissed." "You cannot dismiss the council," Lord Demetrius protested. "We are the governing body of all vampire kind. And I am the Prince of Blackriver, guardian of the ancient barriers," Valerius countered. "This is my domain, and you have violated my hospitality by attacking one under my protection. Leave now or face the consequences." The threat hung in the air, made more ominous by the blood moon's crimson light streaming down upon them. One by one, the council members backed away, retreating toward the chamber entrance. Only the elderly female vampire remained. "The barriers will fall without the ritual, Valerius," she warned. "Perhaps not today, perhaps not for a decade, but eventually they will fail. Then I will find another way to strengthen them," Valerius replied. "One that honors both the letter and spirit of the prophecy." The elder studied him for a long moment, then shifted her gaze to Lucy. "Perhaps you already have," she murmured. Then she too turned and departed, leaving Valerius and Lucy alone in the ritual chamber. As the sound of the vampire's footsteps faded, Valerius sagged slightly, the strain of the confrontation finally showing in his posture. Lucy slid from the altar and moved to his side, placing a steadying hand on his arm. "Are you all right?" she asked. "I should be asking you that question," he replied. "You were the one chained to a ritual altar." "Yes, and we are definitely going to discuss your friend's extremely poor hosting manners later," Lucy said, attempting humor to mask her lingering fear. "But right now, you look like you might collapse." Valerius straightened, making a visible effort to compose himself. "I am fine, merely drained. The confrontation took more energy than I anticipated." "What will happen now?" Lucy asked, glancing around the chamber. "They said the barriers are failing." "They are," Valerius admitted, "but not as rapidly as they claim. We have time to find a better solution than forced ritual binding." "What exactly are these barriers protecting against? What are the ancient evils they kept mentioning?" Valerius sighed, suddenly looking every one of his 300 years. "Before vampires, Before humans dominated the earth, there were other beings, creatures of such power and malevolence that they nearly destroyed all life. My ancestors, working with human magic wielders like your forebears, created barriers to imprison these entities in a realm separate from our own. And you have been maintaining these barriers by yourself? It is both my burden and my duty as the last of the Blackriver line. Valerius's voice was weary. Each blood moon, I perform a ritual that renews the barriers for a time. But with each passing century, it becomes more difficult. The barriers thin. The entities push harder against their prison. Lucy processed this information, trying to fit it into her understanding of the world. A world that had expanded dramatically in the past week. So the prophecy about joining bloodlines, it is about creating someone who can take over this duty? Valerius nodded. A child born of Blackriver vampire royalty and Novak human magic would possess the power to maintain the barriers indefinitely. Or so the prophecy claims. But it has to be through true connection, not force, Lucy mused. That actually makes sense, from a magical perspective. Valerius raised an eyebrow. You seem remarkably accepting of all this. Trust me, I am freaking out internally, Lucy assured him. But panicking will not help us figure this out. And apparently we have an apocalypse to prevent. A strange expression crossed Valerius's face. And then, to Lucy's astonishment, he laughed. It was a rusty sound, as though long and used, but genuine. A warm, rich laugh that echoed around the ritual chamber. What? Lucy asked, confused by his reaction. You, Valerius said, his eyes bright with amusement, faced with ancient evils, vampire politics, and prophetic destiny. Your response is, let us figure this out. What would you prefer? Hysterics? No. Valerius reached out, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. I prefer you exactly as you are, Lucy Novak. The tenderness in his voice made her heart skip. So what now? Now I complete the blood moon ritual alone, as I have for centuries. Valerius glanced at the altar. It will buy us more time to find a better solution. Can I help? Lucy offered. Valerius hesitated. It would require a small blood offering. I would not ask that of you. You are not asking. I am offering. Lucy held out her hand. Show me what to do. After a moment's consideration, Valerius nodded. Very well, but only if you are certain. I am. He led her to the altar, explaining the ritual as they went. It was surprisingly simple. A few drops of blood from each of them, combined in a silver chalice, then consecrated under the blood moon's light with words in an ancient language. The words call upon the original magic that created the barriers, Valerius explained. My blood carries the power of the Blackriver line. Yours, whether you have felt it or not, carries the old human magic of the Novaks. Will it be enough? Lucy asked. For now. Valerius positioned the silver chalice in the center of the altar, directly beneath the shaft of moonlight. In truth, I do not know how much longer I can maintain the barriers alone. But this is better than what the council proposed. Lucy watched as Valerius produced a small silver knife. He made a shallow cut across his palm, allowing several drops of his blood to fall into the chalice. Then he offered the knife to her. Only if you are willing, he reminded her. Lucy took the knife without hesitation and made a similar cut on her palm. The brief pain was worth it to see the relief in Valerius's eyes as her blood joined his in the chalice. As the blood moon reached its zenith, Valerius began chanting in a language Lucy did not recognize. The words seemed to resonate with something deep within her, a dormant power she had never known she possessed. She felt a strange warmth spreading through her body, centering in her chest. The combined blood in the chalice began to glow with an unearthly light, rising into the air in a spiraling column that reached toward the blood moon above. The arcane symbols carved into the chamber walls illuminated one by one, creating a network of glowing lines that converged on the altar. Lucy gasped as she felt power flowing through her, connecting her to Valerius and to something vast and ancient beyond her comprehension. For a brief, transcendent moment, she could feel the barriers Valerius had described, massive walls of energy separating this world from another. She sensed the entities pressing against those walls, their malevolence and hunger making her shudder. Then, as suddenly as it had begun, the ritual ended. The glowing symbols faded, and the column of blood dissipated into the air. Lucy swayed on her feet, momentarily disoriented by the return to normal perception. Valerius caught her before she could fall, his arms strong around her waist. "Are you all right?" he asked, concern evident in his voice. "That was—" Lucy struggled to find words. "I felt them, the things on the other side, and the barriers. They are so beautiful, but so fragile." Valerius stared at her in astonishment. "You saw the barriers? Truly saw them?" Lucy nodded. "Is that not normal? No mortal has ever perceived them directly," Valerius explained, his expression thoughtful. "Even most vampires cannot sense them as I do." "What does it mean?" "It means the council was right about one thing. You do carry the old magic." Valerius guided her away from the altar, toward the chamber entrance. "But they were wrong about how to use it." As they climbed the stairs leading back to the main castle, Lucy noticed that Valerius seemed lighter somehow, less burdened. The ritual had strengthened not just the barriers but him as well. "Where are we going?" she asked as they reached the upper levels. "To the ballroom," Valerius replied. "I suspect most of our unwelcome guests have departed, but some may remain. I should make an appearance to reassure those who were not involved in Lord Demetrius's plot." "Should I come with you?" Valerius hesitated. "It might be safer if you returned to the staff quarters for now." "After what just happened?" Lucy gave him an incredulous look. "I am sticking with you, prince or no prince." Again that rusty laugh escaped him. "Very well, but stay close." When they entered the ballroom, they found it largely empty. Only a handful of vampires remained, among them the elderly female who had spoken of the prophecy. She approached as they entered, bowing slightly to Valerius. "The council has departed, Your Highness," she reported. "Lord Demetrius and his daughter have returned to their own territory, along with their supporters." "And those who supported their actions?" Valerius asked, his voice cold. "They will face judgment according to our laws," the elder assured him. "Forcing a ritual binding is forbidden for good reason." Her gaze shifted to Lucy, curiosity evident in her ancient eyes. "You participated in the ritual willingly?" "I did," Lucy confirmed. "Interesting." The elder studied her with newfound respect. "Perhaps the prophecy will be fulfilled after all, in its own time." "That will be determined by Miss Novak and myself," Valerius said firmly. "Not by council mandate." "Of course." The elder smiled slightly. "I look forward to the next blood moon with great interest." As she moved away, Lucy glanced up at Valerius. "She seems to think we are already courting. Are we not?" Valerius asked, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "Well, there was that kiss before we were so rudely interrupted," Lucy acknowledged. "And I did just participate in a blood ritual with you. I suppose by vampire standards we might be practically engaged." Valerius looked momentarily alarmed, then caught the teasing glint in her eye. His expression softened into a smile. Not the rusty laugh from before, but something warm and genuine that transformed his entire face. "I would prefer to court you properly," he said, "if you would permit it." "What does vampire courtship involve?" Lucy asked, genuinely curious. "Blood drinking? Midnight hunts? Elaborate ritual exchanges?" Traditionally, yes, Valerius admitted. But I was thinking perhaps we might start with something more human. Dinner, perhaps? A concert? I would like that. Lucy smiled up at him. Though I think I prefer your private performances to any concert. Then I shall play for you, Valerius promised. Music that speaks of something besides loneliness and duty. As the remaining vampires began to depart, Lucy and Valerius found themselves alone in the vast ballroom. The orchestra had long since packed away their instruments, but the grand piano remained on its small stage. "Will you play something now?" Lucy asked. "Something new." Valerius considered for a moment, then nodded. He led her to the piano and seated himself at the bench, patting the space beside him in invitation. Lucy joined him, their shoulders touching as he positioned his hands above the keys. The melody that emerged was unlike anything she had heard him play before. Where his previous compositions had been beautiful but melancholy, this piece was vibrant with emotion. Hope intertwined with uncertainty, passion tempered with tenderness, and beneath it all, a sense of awakening. As the final notes faded into silence, Valerius turned to her, vulnerability plain in his eyes. "That is what you have done to me, Lucy Novak," he said softly. "In 1 week, you have changed the music of my existence." Lucy reached up to touch his face, tracing the line of his jaw with gentle fingers. "For a vampire prince with the weight of the world on his shoulders, you clean up rather nicely." Valerius blinked in surprise. Then, miraculous to behold, he laughed. Not the rusty chuckle from the ritual chamber, but a full, rich laugh that seemed to bubble up from someplace long sealed away. It was the sound of ice breaking after an endless winter, of light returning to places long dark. "Did I just make a 300-year-old vampire prince laugh?" Lucy asked, delighted by his reaction. "You did," Valerius acknowledged, his eyes bright with an emotion she had never seen there before. Joy, simple and unguarded. "The first time in 3 centuries, and I suspect not the last." As the blood moon cast its crimson glow through the ballroom windows, Valerius leaned forward to kiss her, not with the hesitation of their first kiss, but with the certainty of someone who had found something precious after centuries of searching. The barriers between worlds might still need tending, and the prophecy remained unfulfilled for now. But as Lucy returned his kiss, she knew they would face those challenges together. The waitress who saw beyond the monster, and the vampire prince who had remembered how to laugh.